Welcome to the 007 Files. I'm David Lee from the James Bond Dossier website and monthly newsletter, and once again I'm here with Javi and Bill. Would you like to introduce yourselves, guys?
I'm Javi Trujillo. I'm a contributor to the JamesBondDossier.com doing comic reviews, and also you can find me on BatmanOnFilm.com doing comic reviews and podcasts.
And I'm Bill Koenig of the Spy Command blog. There's also audio versions of the Spy Command posts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and I'm happy to be here today for this episode.
We're very happy to have you.
Thanks.
And okay, so this is episode 12 of the 007 Files, and it is the very last episode of 2024, and it also marks the end of season 1, as we decided to split the podcast into seasons. Just I don't know, partly probably for my sanity. But it just seemed like a good idea that we go all out for 12 episodes and take a break and regroup and think about what we do for season 2. And I don't think there's going to be much of a break. Well, with a bit of luck, there won't be much of a break. But yeah. What are we going to talk about today, do you think?
Well, there's a little bit of news, not a lot of news, but some news. And as we record this a few days ago, it was reported first by Deadline Hollywood and then by Variety that Eon is working with Amazon MGM on a remake of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Now, apparently work is in the very early stages. According to the Deadline version of the story, they're just now having meetings with potential directors and potential writers. For the uninitiated, the original film based on the Ian Fleming children's novel was released in 1968, starred Dick Van Dyke and Sally Ann Howes, included songs by the Sherman Brothers. It had some key people in the Bond films. Ken Adam was the production designer. Richard Maybaum had a credit for additional dialogue. Roald Dahl had a co-screenwriting credit. And Peter Hunt, who had edited the first 5 Bond films, had a production associate credit. So, and Gert Frobe and Desmond Llewellyn were in the cast. So anyway, it's a fairly well-remembered movie. I was looking at the Guardian story about this, and it said that the movie was very popular, but it lost money because it was so expensive that despite its popularity, it couldn't recoup its costs.
Oh, right. Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. I do remember seeing it a few times on TV, but I haven't seen it for, I don't know, 30, 40 years or something like that.
Yeah, same. I know I saw it. I don't really have any recollection of it. It wasn't something we rewatched a lot as kids. So
no. I think it was one of those films that was on bank holiday weekends every now and then. But this whole story is great news. Eon are working on a new film, and then below that, in the smaller writing,
based on an Ian Fleming property.
Yeah. And just a quick footnote about the original. It was produced by Albert R. Broccoli, but it was not an Eon production. It was through a separate production company of Broccoli's. I want to say Warfield, maybe?
Warwick?
No, I think it was Warfield. Anyway, it was not Eon, because originally when Cubby and Harry formed their partnership, they intended to make non-Bond films. But they only made one, which was Call Me Buana. And then instead, when Saltzman started making his separate projects, he did it through a separate company, and so did Broccoli in the case of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I didn't realize I'd bring the crowd to silence with that revelation.
Fine print on this poster for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and it doesn't say, produced by, immediately.
In the credits, it says Albert R. Broccoli presents, and Dick Van Dyke, Sally Van Howes, and I think someone else in Ian Fleming's Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So the credits mimic the Bond film credits of the era. You know, if you go to IMDb and know where to look, it has production companies and so forth, and that has the name. Again, the name I remember is Warfield, but whatever. And then, but I think it was released through United Artists.
Yes, it was.
As the Bond films were. And then also Eon in the early 2000s produced stage versions of it, and they got the Sherman Brothers, who had done the songs for the 68 movie, to do a few additional songs. So I was seeing on social media, some people were saying, well, you know, it's not a remake, as you know, it's based on an Ian Fleming book, so therefore it's just another adaptation. My suspicion is if this gets made, and we'll see about that, they'll have songs by the Sherman Brothers. So I think that would make it a remake.
Yeah, I think it will be, because Barbara Broccoli was involved in the stage production, so it just makes sense that she brings all that to an updated cinematic version.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
because it's for me it's clear that that's what she's planning on doing.
Warwick is the production company.
was it? Okay.
Yeah, with his partner Alan. Alan being the last name. Yeah, I mean, does it right now? It's all just kind of semantics. If it's another adaptation or a remake, I honestly, I mean, I've never read the book, to be honest. So it's one of those things like the Diamond Smugglers. One of these days, I'm going to get around to buying it and reading it, but I just haven't had the chance to
there's
yet.
something curious about the book, actually, because I remember, but when I was a kid in the UK, it's primary school. Is it elementary school you call it? And
Yeah.
we had a small library there, and I remember that they had Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in the library. But even though I'd been reading the Bond books from the age of 8, never connected Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and Ian Fleming. Even though the cover, if you look at it, clearly it has his name. It just passed me by somehow, and it wasn't until much later on that I actually realised that Fleming had written Chitty Chitty Bang Bang as well as Bond.
Well, a guest of our podcast in a previous episode, that would be Frida Toth. Toth said that she has a copy of, it's a paperback edition of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but that on the cover you can see Dick Van Dyke, but you don't see Sally Ann Howes. It's just a more generic female character. So, yeah, because she said specifically she got into Fleming actually via the book, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And then just through my own interactions, somebody said, and I've never read the book, so I can't say, but supposedly Roald Dahl, in doing the screenplay, invented an entirely different character that's in the movie, that's not in the book.
I can't remember. I did read the book, but I've got no idea.
Yeah. So anyway, it is what it is. It's the latest news we have, such as it is from Eon.
Yeah.
Are you saying that Roald Dahl changed a Fleming book for a movie adaptation?
Yes,
Shocking.
that is because this person said, "Gee, I hope this movie is like closer to the book." I said, I wouldn't count on that. It's like it'd be really hard to do a movie and like ignore all those Sherman Brothers songs. I mean, today, if Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is remembered at all, it's remembered for that movie, and it's like I can't see them possibly doing a movie that did not include the Sherman Brothers songs.
No,
Well-
we're rebooting Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and it's gonna be more grounded and grittier.
The gritty flying car. But when they adapted again Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Danny Elfman threw out all the songs that were for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and his lyrics were more aligned with the Roald Dahl book version of it. So, I mean, it's possible that if they do songs, whoever is involved might want to put their own spin on it. But we had joked. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say, but that movie though was I mean, that was a Tim Burton movie, and
Yeah.
just, Tim Burton is more of an auteur director, and, I mean, anything's possible. We'll
I
see,
mean,
but
it could be a Sam Mendes movie with Thomas Newman score. Yeah, I mean, you never know. And
yeah.
as we joked, in our WhatsApp group, Daniel Craig may be in the Dick Van Dyke or Gert Frobe role, because this is Barbara Broccoli. You never know.
Never know.
Yeah. Are you going to put money on that?
Nah, I think
It
I'd
might
be
be worth
curious
a
to know
dollar
which
bet.
comes first, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or Bond 26. Because it's not like they can't do more than one movie at a time,
Hmm.
but I kind of stayed away from the discourse on this on social media just because I kind of knew which way it was going to go, because I imagine a lot of people are upset that we're getting this news and not Aaron Taylor Johnson confirmed, or whoever the bookies have as Bond for this week.
No, I think it wasn't exactly the news that anybody was expecting, but
When
it's
I
what we
saw
got.
it, and I knew I had to, as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to do a post for the Spy
Yeah.
Command. But it's like, when I did the post, I was like trying to keep the phrasing as neutral as possible, because I knew everyone was going to jump on it. But I will admit, on social media, I did a little joking around with people. But in terms of the post itself, I kept it very straight, very, down the line, because, I mean, we just don't know.
Yeah.
And more broadly, okay, we know that Eon still wants to do an Othello movie, at least to the point they registered it with the UK government so they could get the tax breaks if it gets made. And we know that Barbara Broccoli has hosted people from Qatar, because supposedly, they're seeking Middle Eastern financing for a Othello movie. Othello, again, to remind everybody, it's based on a mid-20s play with Daniel Craig as Iago. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And supposedly it's something Daniel Craig really wants to do, and if he really wants to do it, then probably Barbara Broccoli really wants to do it. And anyway, yeah, it takes the Shakespearean story and puts it in the modern day. But that's still out there, also still out there. We don't know how serious or any details, but like Vijay Armitrage's brother says, "Oh, I'm working with Barbara Broccoli on something." Like, it's like, okay, well, that's out there. But but again, as a bit of context, 10 years ago in 2014, Sony announced that Eon was going to make an Edward Snowden movie that Sony would release. Well, that never happened because there was a competing Edward Snowden project that got, that got ahead of them. And so Sony and Eon kind of put up the white flag on that one. But, I mean, we'll see, but there goes.
You mentioned the website that had been set up for Othello, and that just reminded me of something that I've been meaning to say. Sorry, not the website, but when they registered the limited companies in the UK, they set it up for Bond 22, Bond 23, Bond 24, Bond 25, all at the same time. And at the moment, there is no company registered for Bond 26. And I don't know how important that is or isn't, because they can set up a company, online instantly. And I guess what they were really trying to do was snag the company names rather than anything else. I think it's interesting that at that time they went out and snagged a few company names in one go in 2007, 2008. I can't remember exactly when it was, but still there's no company registered for Bond 26.
Well, I remember, if I'm recalling right, at the time, like I think it was Michael G. Wilson had said like they wanted to get like 5 or 6 Daniel Craig movies out at the time, with him, like in rapid succession, which we all know didn't happen. But I wonder if that's why they did so many.
It could have been, but that was the idea. Absolutely.
Well, in fact, I remember at one point Michael G. Wilson said they wanted to have Daniel Craig make 8 and surpass the Roger Moore record.
Well, and they succeeded in one regard.
In terms of years, yes, but in terms of movies, no. I mean, Michael G. Wilson, he occasionally goes a little overboard in his comments. I certainly took it that way. It was like, at the current pace of production, there's no way he'll do 8. I mean, they're rather fortunate they got 5 out of him, as it turns out.
Yeah. Well, as we discussed, like in the last episode, like The Man with the Golden Gun was like the next year after Live and Let Die. Like that's they took like a 3-year gap to do Spy. So, I mean, the output back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s from Eon was way more accelerated than what we see today with any franchise, period.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is a reflection of the movie business in the 21st century. It's much more involved than it was back then, and so that they can't work at the same pace. But yeah, it's a shame. I also suspect it's something to do with the size of the budgets as well.
Yeah, I wanted to run something by you guys because we have our WhatsApp thread and we talk a lot about Bond and F1 being one of the other main topics that we discuss. I wonder, like, given Eon's like penchant for like chasing after, major things, like we had Star Wars and then Moonraker and, the Kung Fu movies and then Man with the Golden Gun. Like, what if they're just waiting to see how this Brad Pitt F1 movie does? And if it's popular enough, if they look at Drive to Survive, they look at the F1 movie, they've already been to Qatar, which was the next to the last race for this season. Like, what if they just want to adapt Murder on Wheels, but give it a 21st century spin with like Bond at F1 to kind of capitalize on that? Would you guys be interested in seeing that type of Bond movie, him in racing? You've got Aston Martin as a brand.
God, I don't know. You shocked me with that question.
It's not a possibility I had considered, but it's an interesting notion. F1 had been managed for decades by Bernie Ecclestone, who was like this. I wrote about F1 for a while on a previous job because F1 was coming to Indianapolis. And, Bernie was like this absolute dictator. And then since then, he's passed it on. It's much more corporate because for many years, there wasn't a U.S. race. Now they have 3 of them. And it's like, I'm kind of thinking that's like at least 1, maybe 2 too many, because I think 1 F1 race in the U.S. makes it special. 3 is kind of like, it's just, what? I don't know. But that's an interesting possibility.
But which one would you keep, Bill?
I'd keep the one in Texas, actually, because well, it's not just because Javi lives there, because it's at a genuine road course, as opposed to Miami and Las Vegas, where they take over streets, and it's like.
I was just trying to stir it up a bit, but no, I do agree. I agree completely. I think the Miami Grand Prix is just so unexciting. It's not true, and Las Vegas doesn't do it for me either.
There are 2 street courses in all the world that are great races. One is Grand Prix of Monaco, F1 race, and the other is an IndyCar race in Long Beach, California. It's been there for like 25 years, and it's like it has, it's proven it has staying power. A lot of these, street courses, they get set up, and then after a few years, they go away, and so of the 3 U.S. F1 races, 2 are street courses, and it's like, and the Las Vegas one's the weirdest one because it's in the middle of the night in the U.S. They're doing it for television in other global markets. But,
not for us. It's like 6 or 7 in the morning for us, so it doesn't work for us.
Well, it doesn't work for the U.S. either.
It's absurd. Yeah.
Well, that first race, I mean, you guys know there were so many problems with the Vegas track and manhole covers damaging millions of dollars to the Ferrari car, and at least with Austin, like that's 12 years running now. It's been, and that track was built for F1. That was the main purpose for it. And I have family in Vegas, and they couldn't wait for F1 to be over because it caused such a hassle to them just trying to get around town. Versus Austin, it's on the outskirts, and at this point, it's pretty as well managed as it could be for the amount of people that go out there. It's a more stable race, I think.
Well, as both of you know, but I'll mention to our audience. So when I was a kid, there was this movie, I think it was 66, anyway, called Grand Prix. It was about F1, and it was directed by John Frankenheimer, and this was a passion project of his. James Garner was one of the stars. He was the lead star, but there were other stars. And it's very much a time capsule of what F1 used to be. And at that point, there was one F1 race in the U.S. It was at Watkins Glen, New York. It's a road course out in the country. And, it was... Anyway, it's a very good movie. And that kind of... I think my dad, he took us to see it at drive-in. I think he had the F1 bug. And anyway, that's what F1 used to be. And it wasn't as corporate. You didn't have, you had sponsors on the cars, but it wasn't as obvious as it is now. So
yeah, because there's one thing about sponsorship and cars and numbering is that with the computer graphics that they're able to do today, often you'll see the cars and then you'll have a big number above them, so you know who it is. But all the cars have a number. It's just you can't see it from a distance, and it's absurd. Why don't they just have a bloody big number on the side of the car like they used to, and make it high contrast so it's easy to see?
Well, that Visa Cash App logo is really important and takes prominence. So, but I think it could be fun to see like Bond. I mean, in Monaco or in Qatar, like those would be like good races to get like some of the mood and have that kind of like bespoke luxury experience that we expect from James Bond. I wouldn't want to see them like have him at Coda, for instance, partially because it's like my backyard. It's like it's not. It doesn't feel glamorous to me, with people literally riding like horses to the track that I saw that one time. So I don't know. I think it could be a fun way to tap into something and also set it apart from the other 25 movies, because we haven't seen Bond really do any in that kind of racing world.
Well,
and it would harken back to Fleming.
I have to tell you, of course, Ian Fleming did have this notion, and he wrote up something about Bond in a race, Nürburgring specifically.
Yeah.
And Anthony
I think that's what you were referring to at the beginning, weren't you? Have you?
Yeah, and it's it got reused or repurposed for Trigger Mortis, and the notes are in my copy of it.
But I'm here to tell you, in the late 90s, this was at an indoor karting facility. These weren't F1 racers, they were IndyCar racers. And Mercedes-Benz hosted this event, and I was invited. And they had a number of their drivers there, but there weren't enough drivers to go around because everybody in attendance was divided into teams, and I was on a team that had no real drivers. And so the way the rotation went, suddenly I was like out on this karting track with the real race drivers, and it was like the most humiliating experience of my life. It's like imagine you played horse or pig against NBA All-Stars. That's how humiliating it was. And so like I did a post about how it'd be ridiculous for Bond to be on a track with real drivers. People go, no, Ian Fleming said this, blah, 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 blah. Like, guys, I've been there. You want to be humiliated, like go on a cart. This isn't a track. This is like, motorized carts. And like, they're boom, they're shoving me out of the way.
Yeah,
so
well, I remember probably about 10 years ago on Top Gear, one of the presenters, he went to drive an F1 car, and I think it was a Renault at the time, and he couldn't get it. He couldn't drive it. He could not drive it because he said if he drove it at the speed he felt comfortable with, it had no grip because the tires weren't keeping the heat. The only way he could keep heat in the tires was going too fast for him, and it absolutely terrified him, and he just couldn't drive it. And that's a guy who knows how to drive. He just doesn't know how to drive F1 cars.
But we know Movie Bond is pretty much good at anything he does. He's a master the second he picks it up. Like when he was fencing Gustav Graves, who'd been training in, swordplay for how long? And just pick an example, and Bond can pretty much do it with panache right off the bat. So in movie Bond.
Yeah. Well, I think Bill has announced that he's not running to be James Bond in Bond 26.
Confirmed.
Nor should I. So
yeah. Okay. Well, shall we move on, because time is
yes,
is ticking on. So, really, what are you looking forward to next year, 2025?
Well, we'll have a couple of significant anniversaries. We'll have the 60th anniversary of Thunderball. We'll have the 40th anniversary of A View to a Kill. And maybe there'll be some actual Bond 26 news. We'll see. But,
Yeah. Well, on this podcast, we've got some unfinished business as well, because we've got The World Is Not Enough to cover. So that will be a priority to get that done early next year. Yeah. Thunderball's probably my favourite Bond. I think I've said that before, so that'll be fun to talk about. A View to a Kill is one of my least favourites.
Do you think Thunderball will get the same push that Goldfinger got this year for like anniversary merchandise and celebration?
maybe not as much, but I think it'll be close. Because remember, in terms of box office, actually, Thunderball exceeded Goldfinger. I think Thunderball benefited from the Goldfinger phenomenon.
But if you think back to 50 years, I don't particularly remember much surrounding Thunderball 10 years ago.
I remember some. It just, I mean, we'll see. But I think it'll get a lot. It may not be as much as Goldfinger's 60th, but here's the other thing. In terms of 1965, the whole spy craze exploded, both in the UK and the US. So I mean, it was an amazing time. So just because of that, I think Thunderball deserves some mention.
Yeah. What about gold-plated jetpacks from the 007 store?
For $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, if it can fit into the back of your Aston Martin, it'll be worth it, right?
Yeah. They'll have to redesign it a bit, though.
Well, of course, if you actually watch the movie carefully, Bond can't actually close the trunk because this jetpack is so large.
There'll have to be some removable bits so it can all fit in the boot of the Aston Martin. Okay, but maybe it'll come in a special case that is designed to fit in an Aston Martin. But
I
that'll
can
be
picture
extra.
like Orlebar Brown doing some like camp collar toweling polos or something along the beachwear that Connery wears.
No, Orlebar Brown coming up with a towel to wear around your waist. Like when Bond is on that machine that shakes him, and then he takes the woman into the steam room. Yeah, that'll be Orlebar Brown. It'll only cost $250.
Orlebar Brown
more.
mink glove.
God, oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe NPL will jump on that with like a cashmere mink glove.
It'll be a competition between NPL and Orlebar Brown. Who can grab the license first?
Let's say someone, maybe it was NPL, already did like the Thunderball long sleeve black polo. I think.
Yeah, maybe. I don't pay that much attention, but.
And I know like Curry and Paxton is doing glasses in the style of Thunderball, because Pete Brooker on There Will Be Bond mentions that a few times. And I kind of want to get a pair, but I've already got like 3 Bond-related pairs of sunglasses, and predominantly I just wear the Tom Ford Henrys from Spectre. So it's like, do I really need a 4th pair of sunglasses? Like, not really.
Yeah. Well, they can release them, but I doubt I'll be buying them either. But the Thunderball glasses, that I think they've been available on and off for quite a few years now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes sense to release them next year.
Special box, maybe.
Yeah, gold plated. Yeah, and okay, so yeah, Bond news. That's what we want. Some serious Bond news about Bond 25. No, not Bond 25. Bond 26. God.
Well, I mean, we got so used to saying Bond 25 because it took so long with production. So
yeah, Bond 26. But if they get going seriously in 2025, we're talking about 2027, really. Probably.
Yeah, because given the ramp up that they would have to do between the director and the script and the new Bond and
with Casino Royale, Martin Campbell, that they announced Martin Campbell, I think, in January or February of 2005. No, or was it 2000? Yeah, 2000. Daniel Craig was announced
under
in
2 years
October, and then they started shooting in January 2026.
In August of 2017, Craig announced he was coming back for Bond 25.
Yeah.
And then it was another year and a half before they actually started filming.
Because we had the whole Danny Boyle thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
God,
so
soon we're going to be at the decade of that announcement. We're not quite there, but isn't that a bit depressing?
But real quick, I actually looked this up this past week because of Aaron Taylor Johnson. He had this new movie come out, Kraven the Hunter, and it didn't get off to a very good start.
That's an understatement.
Anyway, I looked it up. The Sun has been flogging Aaron Taylor Johnson as the next James Bond for 2 years. Their first story was in November of 2022. I thought it was more like a year, but no.
Wow.
So, and maybe he does. Maybe Taylor Johnson does get the role. I'm not ruling that out, but just this is how long this soap opera has gone on. So,
yeah.
Well, I sent you guys that Good Morning America video from last week where they asked him about Bond at the end of it, and he was very, very cagey about it. It was more like, hey, I'm in a tuxedo and Kraven the Hunter, go see this.
Yeah.
It was funny. Taylor Johnson was desperately, he's playing the good soldier for Kraven the Hunter. And then the host, is pressing him about Bond, and he's just doing his best to duck and weave. I mean, I don't want to say I felt sorry for him because he's very well paid, but still, it's he had to be uncomfortable doing that interview when the host keeps asking about this subject that he clearly is not prepared to address. So
yeah.
Okay, and just one last thing. Any big plans for Christmas and New Year?
Work. I work Christmas Day. I'm off New Year's Eve.
Nice.
So just a bottle of Bollinger, and that's become a tradition with us for the last 10, 12.
Okay, well, at least you're working in Bond style.
Exactly.
On Christmas Eve, I'll watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I will follow it by an episode of The FBI, an American show that ran 65 to 74. And the episode's called Dark Christmas. And then on Christmas Day, I'll watch a episode of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. called The Jingle Bells Affair. So that's my routine. Yeah, I've done it a few times.
What about you,
David? Real quick about Majesties. Yeah. I've seen it so many times, but it's only been the last year or two. I saw this. It's a background. It's part of the background of a shot where Lazenby's Bond comes into the hotel right after the main titles, and he's talking to the guy who runs the place. And in the background, it's the clerk at the desk and bellhops. They're all staring at Lazenby Bond, and you can tell they're so excited. James Bond is here, and like I said, I only noticed that 2 years ago. What? That's amazing. I had to rewind it and say, oh, that is what I just saw.
Yeah. So James Bond was well known at that stage. So that leads nicely into Diamonds Are Forever and you just killed James Bond.
Yeah. Well, at least at that hotel, the staff was very familiar with Bond. Oh, he's back.
He must be a really good tipper.
Yeah, probably
I bet,
that. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I just want to say this has been a great experience, and I hope we can maintain the momentum in 2025.
I second that. It's been excellent doing it.
No, I'd like to echo those sentiments from Bill as well. I've really enjoyed getting to talk Bond with you gentlemen, and just as fun as it is to go over, like the License to Legacy segments and, the good interviews that Bill has gotten. Like, I just really hope next year that we get some concrete news to talk about and speculate on. Because it's been pretty nebulous.
Absolutely.
So, and more soundtracks. I'd be excited to see if we get like a La La Land Thunderball score next year. I've got The Man with the Golden Gun and Moonraker, according to the tracking, are supposed to arrive today, but I trust the USPS to actually get him here on time. But that's been light. I appreciate getting these re-releases from them.
So to the listener out there, thanks for listening to us ramble on about Bond. If you want to hit the follow button on whatever platform you're using, we would be grateful. Leave some feedback for us, as long as it's nice. And well, hope you have a great Christmas and New Year, and we will see you in 2025. Thanks for listening.
Take care, everyone.
007 Files will return.